All right, guys, we're back working on the 2004 Kawasaki Concours. Um, One thing I heard of on all the forums and everywhere I've looked, they talk about the Petcock. Make sure the Petcock's working properly, make sure it's clean, rebuild it. So I'm going to go ahead and rebuild it. I have a All Balls Racing Petcock kit. So we're going to take this Petcock out and take it apart, make all the changes. I drained all the fuel I could get out of this gas tank. I know there's some still left in it, so I'm just having it propped up here. The best thing I could find was probably my torch, which is probably not a good thing to have around gas tanks, but it's turned off. So we're going to go ahead and pull this Petcock out, and that's the next thing we're going to do to this bike. So first thing I'm going to do is I've got the two bolts that go under here. I've already loosened them up a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and drop the Petcock out. So I'm going to get that done. All right, so we had the Petcock out. Came right out really easy. The screen filter looks really good. All right, guys, so I pulled everything out, and there's a lot of little seals, a lot of screws. I like how All Balls does their kits. I've used them for a lot of different things, and I've always had all the parts that I need, sometimes a little extra on certain things. We're going to start on the back, the vacuum side, and we're going to take that apart first. And it looks like they've given you 4 new screws for this, plus the diaphragm and everything for the inside. So let's go ahead and take that apart. All right, guys, so I don't know if you can see here. I don't know if you're going to be able to kind of see what I'm doing, but I'm going to go ahead and just take these 4 screws out. I'm going to just try to see if I can do this right here with it on camera here. So we're going to just take the 4 screws out of here, out of the diaphragm, or out of this cover. And there's probably videos on doing this before, but we'll do another one just in case. Maybe I'll cover something somebody else didn't, or I don't know. Maybe you learned something out of it. Hopefully it helps. Let's see here. All right, there we go. So we got the cover spring. You've got your diaphragm here, and then you have this plate. This diaphragm should come right out, I believe. Yeah, see, this diaphragm has 2 layers to it. So we've got to remember when we go to put it back on, we have to kind of pull the diaphragm through this plate to get this back, just this back layer over here on this side. And we have to just kind of work the diaphragm all the way off. There we go. And of course, the rest of the gas is pouring out of it. But here's what I was talking about. This diaphragm, you actually have to work it through this cover like that. The spacer. So we'll have to remember to do that when we put the new one in. I know they send you the new diaphragm and a new spring and even new screws, which I'm really surprised they sent you new screws as well. So there's the Petcock. It's actually very, very clean inside. It's just, I'm surprised at how clean this is, because I know this bike sat for a while. Don't know how long, don't know the history on this bike really. So I'm going to get the new diaphragm. We're going to pull it through here and get it ready to go back in. So let me see here. I don't have a knife, but I had a pair of scissors laying there. So here's the new diaphragm. And what we're going to do is we'll just push this one through. And then here's the new one. Now we've got to just work this paper, or this first part of the gasket, up through here very carefully, not ripping it. Let's see here if we can get it all folded up. Let's see if we can get it folded up like this. It's going to fight me. I just want to be real careful not to tear anything. So now we're going to have to try to just fit it through. Come on. Keep it coming. See, if I didn't have the camera on, I'd get it right through right away. Be no issues at all. All right, so we've got that in, and I notice here you got a little pin here. I thought there was a breather hole also. Let's find that. Yeah, there's a breather hole right here. So we need to get, and it looks like it has 4 holes in this gasket, so or this diaphragm, so it looks like almost you could get it any direction and it would be right. And you've got a little guide hole up here at the top. So we've got that in, but that still doesn't really match up that bleed hole there. But I don't see how any of them would. So all those holes are in the same spot. All right, guys, I'm starting to really hate cameras. For some reason, it just turned itself off. So we're gonna get these holes lined up the best we can here. There's a little guide nipple on both sides. So we're taking a look at this, and it's got one guide nipple there. And if I had to guess, you would think, well, it's all the same. So we're just going to put it in here. All right. So we've got it lined up there. And we're going to get our new spring. I gotta see the spring at. Screws. Here's the spring. All right. Paper doesn't want to tear or cut very well. All right, so we're going to get the new spring. Put it right there. Diaphragm. Which way was that pointing? I believe it was pointing the same way as the Petcock. So we're going to get that on. We're going to just push it on down here. Try to get everything lined up. Make sure the diaphragm folds over. Everything's right. Okay. So everything's right there. So we're going to hold it in place and start the screws. It's got new screws, but these screws are fine. So we're going to screw it back in. All right. So we got everything lined up, and we're going to put our 4 screws in. I'm going to pause this for just a second, and I'll be right back. All right, guys, so I went ahead and put the 4 screws in. I just used the same ones. They were fine. So we're going to rotate it around, and we're going to take this front piece off. There should be a little wave washer underneath of this, and we'll see what we got. We might have to get a different size screwdriver here. Oh, that'll work. All right, hopefully you can see my hand's not constantly in the way. Try to hold it at an angle where you can see what I'm doing here. All right. So they did give you 2 new screws for this one also, and I'll probably use that because these screws look a little gummed up on the front, and I think it's these two screws right here. That should replace them. All right, so we're going to pop this cover off. And right here's the little wave washer. You can see it right here. So we'll get it in a second. So we're going to go ahead and pull this off. So there's the inside. And just get this wave washer out of the way. So I'm just going to kind of lay things out on the bench here. I don't know if you can see them, how they came off. So part of the Petcock. Then you've got this little plastic piece in here. We're going to have to get a pick to pull that out and replace that. Everything looks really good on this. Yeah, and you have a seal that runs around this part of the Petcock here. We're going to replace that as well. So let me get a small pick. So we've got this piece here. We're just going to pull this out of the way. And it's just a little rubber diaphragm piece that selects, that you can select what where it's at. If it's on reserve, I think reserve was over that. I think reserve was that direction. That was prime. That was reserve, and that was on down here. And as you can see, this I'm like I said before, I'm really shocked at how clean this one is. So we're going to go ahead and put the new one, this new diaphragm in. And of course, I should have got my knife while I was up, but being lazy. All right. If I can get it out of here. All right. So we're going to put this piece in here. We're going to line it up with the holes. Now, I will tell you that the one I pulled out was very flexible. This old one, I mean, this piece of rubber, like, does feel very flexible, where this one was tight, nice and firm. So we're going to put that on. Here's the new wave washer we're going to use, but we're going to get the, I think that's the that should be the gasket that goes around the actual part of the Petcock you turn. Let's see if we can get that off. Pick is flat. So we're going to look at this piece. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little bit of a beveled angle with that seal. So the higher part of the seal should go against this part of the Petcock here. So let's see here. Although the new one doesn't look like that, so I'm guessing that it's probably from just being stuck in this thing. So we're just going to very carefully put this seal on and make sure that it doesn't roll. I had done a Petcock, my first one that I had done, and that seal rolled. And I really couldn't figure out why it was leaking at first until I looked real close, and then you could just see that the seal had rolled. So hopefully you can see that it sits in there nice and flat. So we've got that good. That's good. So we're actually ready to put this back together. There's not a whole lot to these Petcocks. You just want to be very careful. I'm going to put a little bit of just a little bit of oil on this seal so it just slides on nice and smooth and doesn't get caught on anything. Actually, what I'm going to use is alcohol. Alcohol is real good for going around these rubber seals and helping them, gives it just a little bit of lubrication. Then it evaporates and it doesn't harden your seal up or do anything. So I've got a whole big bottle of alcohol. I've used a lot of it. So I'm just going to really get some on my finger and just rub it around real nice on there. And then we're very carefully going to just pop this in, making sure everything stays in place and doesn't roll or anything like that. So we're just going to kind of press it around, try to get the whole seal to go in there nice and smooth. All right, I got to check on my camera settings of what's going on, but it just, after a few minutes, it just turns the camera off, and I can't figure out why it's doing that. All right, so just carefully work it around and just get that seal back into place. Now we're going to get the new wave washer out, and I probably, oh, great, it was open. I didn't open that one, and it just fell out. All right, so we got the new wave washer. Let's see if it'll fit around this way. Yep. All right, so we just got the wave washer put back in, and then we're going to put this outer cover back on. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to clean this cover up a little bit because you can't really read it very well. So I'm just going to clean it up with a little bit of steel wool that I have sitting here. Just gets all the gunk off of it and gets it nice and clean so you can read it again. I was having a hard time reading it. There was so much crud on the reserve and prime side, you couldn't really see which one was which. All right. So just used a little steel wool, cleaned it up. Looks nice now. I'm going to go ahead and do the back part too. It just takes a second. And that's all clean. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and put this on. And let's get the new screws for it. The wave washer popped out of its place. Okay, it's back in there. So I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully you can. I'm just going to screw this back in. I don't like to tighten any of the screws up all the way when I'm doing something like this. I'd like to do, like with this only having 2 screws, do one and then tighten up the other one, and then go back and tighten the first one all the way. That way, if this little cover gets out of place a little bit and you can't get that screw hole started on the other side, then you have to go back and unloosen it anyhow. So it's just the way I do things. Tighten that down and tighten this other one down. All right, so we should have a working petcock now with the new seal in there. So now we're going to replace this top seal. So we're just going to get a little pick in there, get that seal out. Clean this out a little bit in here. Just going through and cleaning the groove out a little bit. The groove had a lot of crud down in there. All right, so get that cleaned up. Now, another thing I like about All Balls kit, you see the seals oblong shape. I've done some of these where they just send you a round seal and you have to get it to fit in there and stay in place. This one has a nice already shaped seal, which makes it nice and easier to get in when you're putting the Petcock back in the tank. All right, so there you go. Seal fits perfectly. Good job, Wallace. Did a good job on this kit. All right. So now we have another smaller seal here, which I didn't see any place that would take a small seal like that. I don't think anyhow. And those are all the bolts. So I want to look at one thing. This diaphragm did have a little O-ring on it. I'm wondering if there was not an O-ring on the new one. I thought there was, but let's take a look and make sure before we put this back in the tank, because that would suck to fill this tank up with gas and then have a leak and have to take it all back apart again. But I thought that diaphragm had one on it. I could go back and watch the recording and see if it did, but let's take a look and see. And turn it this way, we can see it. Like I said, there's a spring in there, so just going to hang on to that spring. I'm going to take the whole thing out. Yeah, there's a O-ring already on it, so I'm not quite sure what that O-ring is for. I mean, it looks like it would probably be the same size to go around that, but I'm not sure. This kit could go for another vehicle also, and that other vehicle may need that seal, but I did not see any other seals in this Petcock that would go for, but I could be wrong. All right, so we're going to put it back together, make sure the little nipple right here lines up so you have everything correct. Going back together. We're going to put the 4 screws back in, and we're going to get ready to put this back on the bike. So I'm going to go ahead and do this part of it, and I'll be back in just a minute when I get the tank back up here. And it's pretty easy to put it back in the tank. It goes in the same way it came out. All right. Be right back. Right, 2 things I forgot to say. One is be very careful with this screen because they do break pretty easy. Also, I don't know if you know how a vacuum operated Petcock works. I don't know if you can see in that little hole. I'm kind of looking on my phone that's monitoring this, but probably can't see. But what happens is you just this gets a vacuum put on it, and this little diaphragm in here, when you put vacuum on it, it sucks it out a little bit and then just lets the fuel flow through. So right now, when we put this back on the tank, and this is a problem that a lot of the concourse owners have with the bike getting filling the cylinders up with fuel, is that diaphragm may be bad, and it'll let fuel run in on your carbs. It runs into your float bowls, and if your float bowl, the float needle is a little worn or something, it could let fuel through into the cylinders, fill it up. You go to start it, you get the hyperlock and bend the rod, basically, is what happens. So this one should be good to go now that it's fixed. I may even look into the upgrade. I know some people talk about upgrading them to get rid of that, and I guess you have an off, like the older Petcocks that had the on-off in reserve. That may be what some people are doing. I haven't really looked into it. I just thought I'd rebuild this one to make sure it was okay. and be good to go. So this one should be ready to go back in the tank. We're going to get ready to do that here in a minute. I'm going to clean up this stuff, get the tank back up here on the bench. All right, the last thing I wanted to show you is that the bolts that came with the bike, or the ones that were on the bike, I'm reusing those. And the reason I'm reusing those is because I like that they have a bolt head on it and a Phillips screw head. The new ones that come with all balls doesn't come with the Phillips head. They're just regular screws. Now they are bolts. They look like you would be able to get a socket or something on them in between here with the because they're a smaller thread. They look like probably an 8mm, maybe. Yeah, I think probably an 8, because these look like a 10. But I just used a screwdriver with them. But it did come with new little plastic seals that go on here. So I'm going to put those back on the old bolts. Those are the ones I'm going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in. It just slides right on up in here. And just be really careful working it in. You have to get it nice and straight and just kind of work it through all the little grooves, because it is a real firm fit. So I'm going to put the camera down and probably turn it off because I don't have any place I can set it right now to, maybe it'll hold there. But I'm still going to put the camera down and use 2 hands to get the bolts started. I don't want to strip anything. But you get the gist of how that goes. Be right back. All right, guys, so that's all there is to rebuilding the Petcock. It's pretty easy. Just put new seals in there. Hopefully it will be a lot better than it was. And not that it was bad. I shouldn't say that. Hopefully we won't have any issues with it in the near future. And it will do its job and keep it from filling the cylinders with fuel. So that's all for this one. I hope you like it. Please like, subscribe, and there will be a lot more to come on this Kawasaki Concours that's sitting behind me. So thanks for watching. Like I said, please like, subscribe, helps me out a lot, and thanks for watching.